The epidural was still numbing my legs when my husband dropped the divorce petition onto my chest like a cheap diner receipt. He looked at me and saw a tired, discarded mother. He did not know that seconds ago my thumbprint had authorized a $10 billion merger. He thought he was serving me an end, but he had just handed me the weapon to destroy him. My name is Brenna Harlow, and I am 34 years old. The silence in my recovery room at Cedar Ridge Medical Center felt heavier than the exhaustion in my bones. The twins had been wheeled away to the nursery 20 minutes ago for their standard vitals check, leaving me alone in the sterile white box of the post-anesthesia unit. My legs still felt like heavy logs of wood under the thin thermal blanket, remnants of the epidural fading too slowly for my liking. The room was quiet, too quiet, devoid of the celebratory chaos that usually follows the birth of two healthy children. The door swung open, but it was not a nurse coming to check my blood pressure. It was Derek. My husband stood in the doorway, and the first thing I noticed was not his concern, but his hair. It was gelled back perfectly, every strand in place. He wore a crisp navy blazer that looked freshly pressed. A wave of sandalwood and musk hit me, an expensive cologne that clashed violently with the sharp, acidic scent of hospital disinfectant. He looked like he was heading to a boardroom presentation, not visiting his wife who had just pushed two human beings out of her body. A man I did not recognize stepped out from behind him. He held a thick manila envelope. Derek nodded at him, and the stranger placed a stack of documents onto the rolling table, pushing it over my numb legs. Just insurance forms. Brenna, Derek said, his voice smooth but tight. We need to get the twins on the policy immediately. I looked down. My vision was blurry, but the bold black letters at the top of the page were unmistakable. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Beneath that, the seal of the district court. This was not insurance. This was an eviction notice from my own life. I looked up at him. Derek avoided my eyes, fixing his gaze on the heart monitor next to my bed. It's just a formality, he stammered, his rehearsed confidence slipping for a fraction of a second. Sign it. Brenna, we need to make this easier on everyone. If you sign now, we can keep the assets simple. And for the twins. I've already outlined a temporary custody arrangement. It is better if they stay at the house while you recover. He spoke the words like a velvet-wrapped knife. He was trying to take my children before I had even held them properly. I did not cry. Tears felt like a luxury I could not afford, and my mind was already shifting gears, moving from shock to analysis. My eyes locked onto a small blue stamp on the bottom right corner of the document. Notary Public, Mesa County. You said you drove straight here from the house, I said, my voice raspy. I did, Derek replied quickly. I just stopped for coffee. Mesa County is 4 hours away. Derek, I whispered, you have been planning this while I was in labor. My phone buzzed against my hip under the sheets. It was a singular, long vibration. I knew exactly what it meant. I slid my hand under the blanket and glanced at the screen. A secure notification flashed Helix Harbor Consortium execution complete. The timestamp read exactly 3 minutes past the hour. My digital signature, pre-programmed to release upon biometric confirmation I had authorized minutes before the delivery, had just finalized the acquisition. The $10 billion deal was closed. Derek saw the light of the screen. His eyes darted down, and for a split second, I saw it. Hunger. Pure, unadulterated greed flashed in his pupils before he masked it with a look of faux concern. He thought it was a bank alert. He thought he was about to get half of whatever liquid cash I had left. I locked my phone and looked back at the stranger, who was shifting uncomfortably in his cheap suit. Who paid? Who paid the filing fee? I asked quietly. The stranger blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me. The court filing fee, I said, staring him down. If Derek drove straight here, and you are just the process server who paid the clerk in Mesa County this morning. The man froze. He looked at Derek, panic flickering in his eyes. He had been caught in a lie he did not even know he was telling. Sign the papers! Brenna! Derek snapped, his patience fraying. Stop stalling! I reached out, but not for the pen. I pressed the red nurse call button on the rail of my bed. I held it down until the light above the door turned solid red. I am not signing anything, I said. What are you doing? Derek hissed. I am calling security, I replied calmly. And then I am going to request the hallway camera footage and the visitor log for this room. I want a record of exactly who tried to coerce a patient under the influence of anesthesia. 6 months before Derek handed me divorce papers in a recovery room, I was sitting in the corner office at North Pine Biologics, staring at a holographic projection of a molecule. I was the director of strategic deals, and I was the only person in the building authorized to hold the encryption keys for the Helix Harbor Consortium negotiation. It was a massive undertaking, a merger that would redefine biomedical supply chains across the continent. I lived in a world of absolute precision, where a misplaced decimal point could cost millions. At home, however, I lived in a world of vague ambitions and shifting goalposts. Derek liked to call himself a project developer, but his resume was a graveyard of 6-month stints and burned bridges. He was obsessed with the aesthetics of success. He bought Italian suits he could not afford and leased a luxury sedan just to drive to meetings that never resulted in a paycheck. He talked about leverage and equity while I paid the mortgage. I started noticing the change over dinner one Tuesday night. Usually, Derek found my work boring, claiming it was too technical for his visionary mind. But that night, he poured me a glass of sparkling water and leaned in too close. So, this Helix deal, he said, slicing his steak with aggressive precision, the signatory authority? That is you. Right. Exclusively you. Yes, I replied, tired from a 12-hour day. Why, I am just curious about the timeline, he said, his eyes scanning my face. If, hypothetically, the digital key was used, does the liability fall on the company or the individual who goes to jail if there is a screw-up? It was a strange question. Most people asked about the bonus or the stock options. Derek was asking about the escape route. The company indemnifies me. Derek, I said, as long as it is my verified biometrics. Why are you asking about jail? He laughed, but it did not reach his eyes. I am just looking out for you. Brenna, you are so trusting. You do not know how to maximize your position. You are about to become a mother, and look at you. You are letting yourself go. You are going to be a sloppy, tired mom if you do not start thinking like a shark. He used my pregnancy as a weapon to dismantle my confidence. He started sleeping in the guest room, claiming my tossing and turning was ruining his focus for his big ventures. I found the cracks in his story by accident. We synced our digital calendars for prenatal appointments, but Derek had forgotten to filter out his private layer. I saw blocks of time labeled VC during hours he claimed he was at the gym. I assumed it meant venture capital, but when I clicked on the details of one entry from 2 weeks prior, the location tag was not a bank. It was a UPS store in town. The notes read, Notary, LLC Filing, Twincrest. I confronted him about a name I heard him whisper on a phone call late one night, Vivian Cross. She is just a potential sponsor, Derek had snapped, his face flushing red. She understands the market. Unlike you, she sees the big picture. You just focus on the baby. Stop nagging me about business you do not understand. I let it go. I was too exhausted to fight. But the instinct that made me a director at North Pine did not sleep. During the final compliance review for the Helix Harbor deal, I made a unilateral decision. I sat with our lead counsel and added a hidden clause to the escrow instructions. It was a synthetic identity trigger. If the system detected any discrepancies in the identity verification of the vendors attached to the initial payout, the smart escrow would not just reject the transaction, it would freeze the assets of every related party. I did not tell Derek. I did not tell him because, in my world, information is tiered, and he did not have the clearance. It was not suspicion, not fully. It was just protocol. The flashback ended with a sharp memory of the night my water broke. I was clutching the kitchen counter, breathing through the first real contraction. Derek was putting on his shoes. I have to take this call, he had said, looking at his phone. It is the investor. This is the make-or-break moment, Brenna. He left me standing there in a puddle of amniotic fluid for 10 minutes. When he came back to drive me to the hospital, he wasn't panicked. He was smiling. It was a small, terrifyingly satisfied smile, as if he had just closed a deal of his own. I gripped the door handle and told myself it was just nerves. I did not know that while I was bringing life into the world, he was finalizing the paperwork to destroy mine. 3 days after leaving the hospital, I sat in my home office, not with a baby in my arms, but with a forensic accounting of my own life. The house was empty. Derek was staying at a hotel, ostensibly to give me space, but I knew he was just waiting for the ink to dry on the divorce papers. I pulled my credit report. It was usually pristine, a point of pride for a woman in finance. But there, buried under the standard mortgage and car lease entries, was a line of credit opened 17 months ago. The outstanding balance was $68,400. I had never signed for it. I called Marisol Vega immediately. Marisol was not a divorce lawyer. She was a corporate litigator who ate fraud cases for breakfast. I had sent her the scan of the divorce petition Derek had slapped on my chest. Brenna, are you sitting down? Marisol's voice was crisp through the speakerphone. I read the petition. He is not just asking for a divorce. He is asking for a financial funeral. Look at page 4, subsection C. I flipped the pages. The division of liabilities. Read the fine print on the debt assumption, Marisol instructed. He slipped in a clause stating that you accept full responsibility for all debts incurred by marital entities in the last 24 months. It looks standard, but combined with that mystery credit line, it is a trap. He is dumping a toxic asset on you. I found the source of the debt, I said, typing furiously on my laptop. It is linked to a business loan. Let me guess. Marisol said, Twin Crest Imaging Assets, LLC. I froze. How did you know that? Because I just pulled the corporate registry for New Mexico, Marisol replied. Twin Crest was registered last year in Albuquerque. The registered agent is a shell service, but the financial guarantor, that is you, Brenna, and they uploaded proof of identity. My inbox pinged with an email from Marisol. It was a PDF of the formation documents. Attached was a scan of my driver's license. I zoomed in on the image. The license was resting on a dark walnut surface. In the upper left corner of the image, barely visible, was a white circular stain, a water ring left by a glass without a coaster. I stared at the desk in front of me. The same dark walnut, the same water ring that I had scolded Derek about for years. I remember this, I whispered, my stomach turning. Last year, when I was buying the SUV, Derek offered to scan my license for the dealership because the scanner in my office was jamming. I thanked him. I actually thanked him for being helpful. He has been building this architecture for over a year. Marisol said, Listen to me. Brenna, lock everything, freeze your credit at all 3 bureaus, change every password, from your bank to your email to your grocery delivery app. And do not text him. Do not let him know you have seen the map. I am not going to text him, I said, reaching for the old laptop Derek had left behind in his rush to pack. I am going to audit him. I booted up his old machine. He had wiped the browser history, but he was lazy with his local files. I opened his calendar archive and cross-referenced it with our joint bank statements. Every time he had a calendar entry labeled VC, which he had told me stood for vendor call, there was a cash withdrawal from our joint checking account. $200 here, $400 there. Small enough to go unnoticed, cumulative enough to fund a parallel life. Then I checked the temporary files folder. the digital trash can he forgot to empty. I found a zipped folder named ID Pack BH. I opened it. It was a toolkit for identity theft. There were high-resolution scans of my passport, my social security card, and my signature extracted from digital documents. But there were also morphed photos my face superimposed onto different backgrounds, holding newspapers from dates when I was actually at work. These were proof-of-life photos used for remote notarization. I dug deeper, finding a cached email thread stored in a draft folder. I expected to find a love letter to a mistress. I expected to find Derek bragging to a girlfriend about leaving his boring wife. Instead, I found orders. The email was from an encrypted address. The subject line was simply instructions. Use her clean profile for the Albuquerque filing. The email read, "Her credit score is Tier 1. Keep yours untouched. We need you invisible for the final transfer. Do not mess this up. Derek. Or we cut the line." I sat back, the cold light of the screen illuminating the dark room. Derek was not having an affair, not in the traditional sense. He was not the mastermind. He was an employee. He was being managed. He was not a king building a new kingdom. He was just a pawn being moved across the board by a player who knew exactly how to use a wife's perfect credit score as a shield. I took the file Marisol had compiled and drove to the edge of town. Kira Maddox lived in a converted warehouse that served as both her home and the studio for her podcast, The Ledger. We had gone to college together, but while I climbed the corporate ladder at North Pine, Kira had dedicated her life to exposing the rot underneath the rungs. She knew how to follow money when it tried to hide. I laid the Twin Crest LLC documents and the scan of my license on her mixing desk. Kira did not offer me tea or sympathy. She put on her glasses and looked at the paperwork with the cold precision of a surgeon. "This is not a divorce, Brenna," Kira said, tapping the page with a stylus. "You do not set up a shell company with federal loan guarantees just to hide assets from a spouse. This is structural. This is an engine designed to move massive amounts of capital." She pulled up the photo of the woman Derek called Vivian Cross. She did not search for the name. Instead, she cropped the face and ran it through a reverse image search engine that scraped industry watch lists rather than social media. "Names are cheap," Kira muttered. "Faces are expensive." The search bar spun for 30 seconds before pinging. A PDF from a medical device fraud bulletin popped up. It was dated 3 years ago. The name on the alert was not Vivian Cross, but the face was identical. "Got her," Kira said, pointing to the screen. "Look at the chin. See that small, white scar? It is faint, but the algorithm caught it." I leaned in, and a chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I knew that face. "I know her," I whispered. I have never met her, but I have seen her, where in a mandatory compliance training at North Pine. I said, my voice tightening. "She was on a slide about synthetic identity rings. She is a known operator for vendor portal exploitation. They use her face to bypass biometric checks on lower-level security tiers." My phone rang. It was an unsaved number. I put it on speaker so Kira could hear. "Hello, listen. B," a distorted male voice said. "Just sign the waiver Derek gave you. It is cleaner that way." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, my hand shaking. "Did he call you B?" Kira asked. "Yes," I said, feeling the blood drain from my face. "Only my internal team at North Pine calls me B. That nickname is not on my social media. It is not in my public files. It is only in the encrypted internal server. They have read your emails," Kira said grimly. "They are not just impersonating you, Brenna. They are inside your work life." A text message from Derek popped up on my screen immediately after the call. "I can wire $50,000 to your personal account today. I just need you to sign a spousal waiver for a land deal in New Mexico. It is a bad investment I made, and I want to get it off our books before the divorce is final. Quick cash for the twins." He was trying to buy my signature for $50,000. He was trying to get me to legally acknowledge the existence of the fraud, thereby making me complicit. I called Marisol. He offered 50,000. I told her, do not refuse him. Marisol commanded, her voice sharp, do not say no. Tell him you need time to think. Let him keep talking. We need him to text you the instructions. Let them record their own confession. I took a screenshot of the text, ensuring the timestamp of 4:12 p.m. was visible. I typed back, I am tired. I need a day to think about it. Kira was typing furiously on her second monitor. She had hacked into a public vendor registry that updated faster than the consumer web. Brenna, Kira said, and her tone made me look up instantly. I found where TwinCrest is trying to dock. She turned the screen toward me. It was a vendor application status page. Look at the client, Kira said. I read the name. Helix Harbor Consortium. The blood roared in my ears. TwinCrest, the company Derek had set up in my name with a stolen identity, was in the pending approval queue to become a supplier for the merger I had just closed. They are not just trying to steal my savings, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Derek isn't hiding assets from me. He is using me as the mule. They are going to use your credentials. Kira finished for me. They are going to invoice the Helix Harbor deal for millions using TwinCrest, and because you are the guarantor, because you are the director of strategic deals, it will look like you approved your own shell company to embezzle the funds. They want to frame me, I said, my voice trembling with rage. They are going to drain the $10 billion deal and leave me holding the bag while I am changing diapers. Not if we catch them first, Kira said, opening a new recording file. We are going to let them walk right into the vault. And then we are going to lock the door. The summons to North Pine headquarters came at 7 in the morning. It was not a calendar invite. It was a phone call from the general counsel himself. When I walked into the glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor, 3 people were waiting for me: the general counsel, the head of HR, and the chief information security officer. The air in the room was cold enough to preserve a corpse. Brenna, the general counsel started, sliding a printout across the mahogany table. We received an anonymous whistleblower complaint at 3 in the morning. It alleges that you have been using your administrative privileges to query vendor data for personal leverage. Specifically, that you are attempting to blackmail a competitor. I did not touch the paper. I sat down, folded my hands on the table, and looked him in the eye. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my face was stone. I did query the database, I said, my voice steady, but not to blackmail anyone. I was confirming a security breach. I believe a synthetic identity ring is attempting to penetrate the Helix Harbor supply chain. That is a serious accusation, the security officer said, typing on his laptop. The complaint says you are targeting a woman named Vivian Cross out of personal jealousy. Check the source IP of the complaint email, I said. If this is a genuine whistleblower, they would have used a VPN or a burner route. If it is a personal attack disguised as compliance, they might have been lazy. The security officer frowned, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The silence stretched for a minute, heavy and suffocating. The email originated from a guest Wi-Fi network, he muttered. The Hotel Andaluz. In Albuquerque, New Mexico? I asked. He looked up, surprised. Yes, how did you know? Because that is where my husband is currently staying, I said, allowing a fraction of my anger to seep into my tone. He is there with the woman mentioned in the complaint. This isn't a whistleblower report. It is a preemptive strike to discredit me before I could report the fraud. The mood in the room shifted instantly. The general counsel leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. I was no longer the suspect. I was the asset under attack. If they are trying to burn you, he said, it means you are close to something that could hurt them. They are trying to dock a shell company called TwinCrest into the Helix procurement stream, I explained. They used my identity to secure the credit. Now they want to use my firing to clear the path. By noon, my status had changed. I was formally inducted into the Internal Whistleblower Protection Program. They gave me a corporate attorney and, More importantly, unrestricted access to the raw transaction logs. I had the weapon I needed. I returned to my home office and logged in. Within an hour, a courier arrived with a letter. It was from a law firm I had never heard of, based in Nevada. It was a cease and desist order, accusing me of defamation and harassment against Vivian Cross. The language was precise, weaponized legalese. It cited specific statutes about interference with business relations. I read it twice. This was not Derek. Derek could barely spell affidavit. This was Vivian. She knew exactly how to play the victim. She was using the legal system to freeze me, betting that I would be too scared of a lawsuit to keep digging. She understood compliance better than half the people in my building. She was not just a thief, she was a professional. I threw the letter aside and went back to the logs. I filtered for Twin Crest. There it was. A pending purchase order submitted 4 hours ago. They were not just trying to steal money. They were trying to loot the vault. Twin Crest had submitted a quote for specialized high-resolution imaging units at 3 times the market rate. The total invoice was massive. If approved, the funds would flow into the Twin Crest account, pass through the structure I unknowingly guaranteed, and disappear offshore. I called Marisol and Kira on a conference line. They just submitted the invoice. I told them. It is sitting in the approval queue. If I flag it now, the system rejects it, and they run. So we leak it? Kira asked. I can have this on the front page of the business section by tomorrow morning. Husband frauds wife in billion-dollar scheme. It would destroy them. No, I said, watching the cursor blink next to the pending approval button. If we go to the press, they get spooked and vanish. Vivian changes her face again. Derek claims ignorance. Then what do you want to do? Marisol asked. I want them to think they won, I said, my voice cold. I want them to show up to court thinking they are about to take everything from me. Do not publish a single word, Kira. I do not need a scandal. I need handcuffs. The charity summit in Santa Barbara was an exercise in curated excess. Tickets cost $5,000 a plate, but Kira Maddox had secured us media passes by claiming she was covering the event for a boutique financial journal. I was not there to make a scene. I was not there to throw wine in the face of the woman sleeping with my husband. I was there to confirm a theory that was terrifying me more than the divorce itself. We spotted them near the champagne fountain. Derek looked like he was born in a tuxedo, though I knew he had rented it. Beside him, Vivian Cross was a vision in emerald silk. She moved with a practiced elegance, guiding Derek's hand on the small of her back as if she were steering a puppet. They looked like a power couple. They looked untouchable. I walked straight into their line of sight. Derek saw me first. His smile faltered, then hardened into a look of performative pity. He leaned in toward the elderly donor he was chatting with, speaking just loud enough for the surrounding circle to hear. It is sad, really, Derek said, shaking his head. She cannot accept that it is over. Postpartum emotions are very difficult to manage. He was painting me as the hysterical, obsessed ex-wife. It was a smart play. It discredited anything I might say before I even opened my mouth. Vivian turned. Her eyes swept over me, cold and calculating. There was no fear in her gaze, only a sharp, analytical assessment. She extended a hand, her manicure flawless. You must be the wife, she said, her voice like smooth glass. It is so brave of you to come out so soon after... Murph Brenna. I meant Brenna. The slip was microscopic. To anyone else, it was a stumble over a name. To me, it was a gunshot. Murph. It was not a name. It was a tag. In the internal audit logs at North Pine, my user profile for the Helix deal was anonymized under the random generator tag MURF19. Only someone who had cracked the encrypted vendor logs would know that sequence associated with me. Derek did not know that tag. Even my boss did not use that tag in conversation. Vivian had not just stolen my husband. She had been inside my work server. I took her hand. It was cold. "It is a pleasure. Vivian," I said, keeping my pulse steady. "I just wanted to see who Derek was spending all his time with. He told me you met in, was it Florida?" It was a lie. Derek had never mentioned a location. I threw out Florida because the fraud bulletin Kira found had tracked her previous alias to a scam in Miami. Vivian froze. It lasted less than half a second. Her pupils contracted, and the polite smile on her face twitched at the corner. "New York," she corrected quickly. Too quickly. "We met in New York." "Right." I smiled. "My mistake. Florida is so hot this time of year." I looked at Derek. He was not looking at me. He was looking at Vivian. He had seen the twitch. He had seen the shadow of panic cross her face when I mentioned Florida. Sweat beaded on his temple. For the first time since he served me the papers, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He realized, in that silent moment, that he did not know where his new fiancée was actually from. "We have to go," Derek muttered, gripping Vivian's elbow a little too hard. "The keynote is starting." They walked away, but the rhythm was off. Vivian was rigid. Derek looked like he was trying to solve a puzzle in his head. I walked back to the terrace where Kira was pretending to photograph the sunset. She lowered her camera and showed me the viewfinder. She had zoomed in on Vivian's profile under the harsh patio lights. "I got it," Kira whispered. "High definition. The scar on the chin is 100% matched to the bulletin." My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Kira checked her own phone. She had received a message via an encrypted signal app. "It is my source in the event organization," Kira said, reading the screen. "He says we should be careful. He says the Ashwood Circle Foundation that Vivian claims to represent. It does not exist." "What do you mean?" I asked. "He says it is a ghost brand," Kira replied, her face pale. "The logo is owned by an offshore holding company, and the ownership loop goes right back to a distressed asset fund that vanished 3 years ago. Brenna, this isn't a family fortune. It is a money laundering front." Back in Kira's studio, the walls were covered in a spiderweb of printed diagrams. She traced a red line from the Ashwood Circle Foundation logo to a holding company in the Cayman Islands, and finally back to a nameless, distressed recovery fund that had ceased operations 5 years ago. "It is a ghost loop. Brenna," Kira said, capping her marker. "Ashwood Circle does not belong to a family. It belongs to an algorithm. The logo is owned by a shell company designed to funnel money out of the country, not into charities." My phone buzzed. It was Marisol. Her voice was electric with adrenaline. "I found her," Marisol said, "or at least, I found who she was 4 years ago. I pulled a marriage license from Nevada. A woman with her exact biometrics married a mechanic in Reno under the name Elena Vance. There is no divorce decree on file. Brenna, no annulment. So she is a bigamist?" I asked. "It means her marriage to Derek is legally void," Marisol replied. "And that means there is no spousal privilege. If we put him on the stand, he cannot refuse to testify against her. He is not her husband. He is just her accessory." I opened the laptop Derek had left behind again. I dug into the archived emails, reading them with new eyes. I had been looking for romance, for betrayal of the heart, but there was none. Vivian's emails to him were cold, precise, and terrifyingly transactional. "Do not transfer the full amount." One email read, "Split the payments. Keep every transaction under $4,500 to avoid the reporting threshold. If you trigger an audit, you are on your own." She was teaching him how to structure payments. She was teaching him how to commit federal wire fraud. My phone rang at 2 a.m. It was Derek. His voice was cracked, barely a whisper. "Brenna, what do you want?" Derek, I asked into the darkness of my living room. She said she just needed to borrow your credit score for a few weeks. He stammered. I could hear the panic rising in his throat. She said it was like co-signing a car loan. I uploaded the papers to the portal. Brenna, I thought it was just a formality. You uploaded my passport, I said, my voice flat. You used my identity to guarantee a multi-million-dollar supply contract. I didn't know it was that big. He cried out. She told me it was small. She said sisters have to help each other. But now she is talking about moving money to an offshore account. And I am scared. I hung up. I did not need to hear his apology. I realized the full scope of the trap. If Twin Crest collapsed, the investigators would not look for a woman named Vivian Cross who did not legally exist. They would look for the guarantor. They would look for me. I was the perfect fall guy, a new mother. Distracted, with high-level clearance and a history of approving deals. Then I remembered the Helix Harbor contract, the $10 billion deal I had closed while breathing through contractions. I remembered the hidden escrow clause I had inserted. Automatic freeze upon synthetic identity detection. Vivian had not targeted Derek because he was charming. She had targeted him because he was the doorman. She needed someone who knew my schedule, who had physical access to my ID documents, and who could distract me while she docked her parasite company into the host. She wanted the $10 billion flow. We have to trigger the trap, I told Kira the next morning. If we expose them now, they run. Kira warned. No, I said, we do not expose them. We invite them in. I need Derek to sign one last thing. I need him to verify the upload with a secondary confirmation. Once he does that, it becomes a federal crime involving interstate commerce. There is no way out. You are going to let them think they succeeded, Kira said slowly. I am going to let them walk into the vault, I replied, and then I am going to let the system lock the door behind them. Okay, Kira said, picking up her camera. I will hold the story, but I want to be there. I want to see the look on her face when the accounts freeze. You will. I promised. Get your camera ready. Marisol Vega did not sleep. She filed an emergency motion at the Federal District Court at 8 in the morning. It was a masterpiece of legal aggression. She was not asking for a divorce settlement yet. She was asking for a preservation order. She demanded the immediate seizure of notary logs and the freezing of all electronic evidence related to the Twin Crest entity based on probable cause of federal identity theft. I went back to Cedar Ridge Medical Center, the risk management officer, a woman who looked as tired as I felt, handed me a hard drive sealed in a tamper-evident bag. This is the hallway feed from the maternity ward, she said. It is time-stamped and chain of custody certified. It proves exactly who entered your room and when. I took the drive. It was the first nail in the coffin. Next, I met with the North Pine security team. They handed me a thick stack of printouts. These were my badge in and badge out logs for the past year. On the specific date that the notary in New Mexico claimed I had appeared before him to sign the loan guarantee, the logs showed I was physically located inside the North Pine secure server room in Colorado. I could not have been in two places at once. The physics of their lie were falling apart. I sat in my car and picked up my phone. It was time to play the victim one last time. I needed Derek to feel safe. I needed him to think I was the weak, emotional wife he had discarded. Derek, I texted. I am just so tired. The twins are crying all night and I can barely think. Please, just give me a few days before I look at the paperwork. The response was immediate. The 3 dots bubbled on the screen for only a second. I understand. Brenna, I sent you a digital copy via email. Just click the link and e-sign it when you can. It will take 10 seconds. Then you can rest. I drove home and opened the email, but not on my personal computer. I forwarded it to the isolated sandbox environment the IT team at North Pine had set up for me. I opened the document. It was a trap, of course. But the metadata told a different story. The document author was listed as Admin Twin Crest, and the source IP address resolved directly to the guest network of the Hotel Andaluz. He was not sending me a document from his heart. He was forwarding an execution order from Vivian's laptop. Kira was busy setting the stage for the final act. She had arranged a fake inquiry through a shell email. She posed as a representative for a private equity angel investor who wanted a private audience with the visionary founder of TwinCrest. She requested the meeting for the day after the hearing. If Vivian accepted, she would have to use one of her old aliases to pass the background check Kira's fake firm required. Then, the trap snapped shut from a direction I did not expect. My phone buzzed with a critical security alert from my personal brokerage account. Password reset attempted. Security question answered. What is the hospital of your youngest child's birth? My blood ran cold. Vivian was not satisfied with the business fraud. She was using the hospital admission forms Derek had stolen, the ones with the twins' birth details, to try and hack my personal liquidity. She was getting greedy. She was trying to empty me out before the court date. That is it, I said aloud to the empty room. I logged into the Helix Harbor secure portal. I navigated to the escrow controls. I activated the red clause. I uploaded the entire package, the fake notary logs, the conflicting location data, the IP traces, and the identity theft report. I sent it directly to the independent auditor responsible for the $10 billion merger. I called Marisol. They just tried to breach my personal accounts. I said, I sent the package to the auditor. Do not stop them, Marisol said, her voice icy calm. Let the system flag them. We are not going to arrest them tonight. We are going to wait for Tuesday. The hearing. I said, exactly, Marisol replied. Let them walk into the courtroom. Let them lie under oath. And let the money lock itself right in front of their eyes. We settled into a tactical silence. The clock was ticking down to the hearing, and for the first time in months, the silence did not feel like loneliness. It felt like a weapon. The silence from my end finally broke Derek. He switched tactics, moving from the pathetic husband to the aggressor. He left a voicemail at noon that made my skin crawl, not out of fear, but out of disgust. Brenna, if you do not sign the waiver by tonight, I am filing for emergency temporary custody. His voice cracked on the recording. You are clearly suffering from postpartum instability. You are not thinking straight. The court will see that a depressed mother is a danger to her children. Do not make me take them from you. He was weaponizing my recovery. He was betting that the tired, hormonal version of me would crumble at the threat of losing the twins. I did not crumble. I made an appointment. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, I had a certified mental health evaluation from a court-approved psychiatrist and a full physical clearance from my obstetrician. I did not get these documents to reassure myself. I got them to prove that his motion for custody was not based on concern, but on malice. It was an attempt to manipulate a witness. While I was securing my medical defense, Vivian made her move. A new letter arrived from her attorneys, demanding $2 million in damages for defamation of character and interference with prospective economic advantage. Marisol read the letter and laughed. She is bluffing, Marisol said, typing rapidly. She wants to scare you into a settlement. I am going to respond with a discovery request. We are going to ask for the metadata of every device she has owned in the last 5 years. We are going to ask for the unredacted ledgers of the Ashwood Circle Foundation. Watch how fast she drops this lawsuit when she realizes she has to open her books. At North Pine, the trap caught its first physical prey. The security team flagged a new entry in the procurement log. TwinCrest had attempted to upload a backdated contract into the Helix Harbor system. The automated filters I had installed blocked it, but they recorded the attempt. We now had a digital fingerprint of them trying to insert a fraudulent document into a federal supply chain. Then came the twist I had anticipated. But it was crueler than I imagined. Derek called me again in the evening. He sounded strange lighter, almost relieved, but with an undercurrent of confusion. It is going to be okay. Brenna, he said. Vivian found a way to fix it. She had me sign a declaration. It says that the TwinCrest setup was my independent project, to protect you. I gripped the phone tighter. To protect me. Yeah, Derek said, his voice trembling slightly. She said, if I take the heat for the administrative error, the audit won't touch you. She said women have to look out for each other, but since she is an outsider, she needs me to be the shield. I signed it. Brenna. I took the blame for the paperwork. He did not understand what he had done. Vivian had not asked him to sign a shield. She had handed him a confession. She had legally isolated herself from the fraud, ensuring that when the hammer came down, it would land squarely on Derek's head. I pressed the record button on my side of the line. "Derek," I asked softly, keeping my voice steady. "Just so I understand. You admit that you used my ID without my permission. I had to," he stammered, "for the deal. And you physically signed my name on the notary book in New Mexico. Yes. But only because you were busy," he insisted. "And I split the money transfers like she told me. I did everything right. Brenna." "Why are you acting like this is a crime? I just needed to hear you say it," I whispered. I hung up. That night, a notification flashed on my tablet. Helix Harbor Consortium, final closing scheduled for 0900 a.m. The $10 billion deal would officially settle tomorrow morning. Derek and Vivian believed that once the clock struck 9, the TwinCrest account would be flooded with authorized vendor payments. They thought they were hours away from being rich. I walked into the nursery. The twins were asleep, their chests rising and falling in a perfect, peaceful rhythm. I was not just their mother. I was their perimeter wall. I looked at my phone and typed a single message to Derek. Tomorrow. 9:30 at the courthouse. Bring the papers you want me to sign. I deleted it and retyped it in English, keeping it short. Tomorrow. 9:30 at the courthouse. Bring the papers you want me to sign, Derek replied instantly with a thumbs-up emoji. He thought I was surrendering. He thought I was coming to sign away my rights. He did not know that I was coming to watch him lock the handcuffs on his own wrists. The Denver courtroom was silent, save for the hum of the ventilation system. Marisol Vega stood before the judge, a projector screen illuminating the dim room behind her. She did not shout. She simply pointed. "Your Honor," Marisol said, her voice cutting through the air like a razor. This spousal waiver was notarized in Mesa County, New Mexico, at 10:15 in the morning last Tuesday. However, this video file is from the security camera at Cedar Ridge Medical Center in Colorado. The timestamp is identical, at 10:15 in the morning. Mr. Sloan was not in New Mexico signing a document. He was standing in my client's recovery room, handing her a divorce petition. I stood up, holding the printed logs from my office, and I could not have been there to sign it either. I told the judge, keeping my voice steady. At that exact moment, my unique biometric ID was logged into the North Pine secure server in Colorado. It is physically impossible for either of us to have appeared before that notary. Derek stood up, his face pale. He looked at the judge, sweating profusely. It was just a misunderstanding about the dates, Derek stammered, wringing his hands. I might have mixed up the paperwork. Your Honor, it was a stressful week. A misunderstanding, Marisol asked. Clicking a button, the screen changed. It showed the text messages Derek had sent me. The threats, the deadlines, the demands for money. Mr. Sloan texted my client at midnight threatening to take emergency custody if she did not sign. Marisol read aloud. That is not a misunderstanding. That is extortion. Vivian was called to the stand next. She walked with her head high, but her eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal. State your name for the record, the clerk said. Vivian Cross, she replied smoothly. Marisol walked toward the witness box, holding a single sheet of paper. Ms. Cross? Marisol said. We ran a fingerprint analysis from the glass you touched at the charity summit in Santa Barbara. It matches a civil file from 4 years ago. The name on that file is not Vivian Cross. It is Elena Vance. Vivian froze. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. And furthermore, Marisol continued, dropping the second bombshell. Elena Vance is currently listed as legally married to a mechanic in Nevada. We found no divorce decree. Your marriage to Mr. Sloan is likely void, which means you have no spousal privilege here. You cannot refuse to answer my questions." Before the judge could rule, a loud ping echoed from my tablet on the table. A red banner flashed across the screen, escrow lock triggered. The $10 billion Helix Harbor deal had just attempted to close. The system had detected the fraudulent Twin Crest vendor application linked to the synthetic identities. The red clause I had written weeks ago had fired. Every penny destined for Twin Crest was frozen instantly. A man in a gray suit stood up from the back of the courtroom. "Your Honor," he said, flashing a badge, "I am with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We received a mandatory financial report from the Helix Harbor auditor regarding a wire fraud attempt involving interstate commerce." Marisol delivered the final blow. She projected the email chain I had pulled from Derek's laptop. "Here is the instruction from the account associated with Miss Vance," Marisol said. "It reads, 'Use her clean profile, confirm when done.' And here is Mr. Sloan's reply, 'Confirmed. Uploading her info now.'" Derek looked at the screen. He slumped into his chair, burying his face in his hands. He could not say he did not know. The words were right there in black and white. The judge banged the gavel. The sound was the loudest thing I had ever heard. "The temporary divorce agreement is voided immediately," the judge ruled. "All assets associated with Twin Crest are frozen. Mr. Sloan, you are remanded into custody pending federal charges. Ms. Cross, or rather, Ms. Vance, you are detained as a flight risk." 2 officers moved in. I heard the metallic click of handcuffs. Derek looked back at me as they led him away. He looked small. He looked like a man who finally realized he was never the player. He was just the tool. I did not watch them leave. I picked up the carrier with my sleeping twins and walked out of the double doors. My phone buzzed one last time. It was a secure message from North Pine: deal closed. Vendor fraud isolated. Transaction successful. I stepped out onto the courthouse steps. The sun was blindingly bright. For the first time in months, the air tasted clean. I was not a victim. I was not a shield. I was Brenna Harlow, and I had just closed the biggest deal of my life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment down below where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people.